welcome into the Sporting Jacks Report along with Mauricio Ruiz. I'm Cole Pepper. Coming up, we're going to check in on the U.S. Open Cup and get advice for parents who want to support their kids' soccer obsession. But let's start with the big question in U.S. soccer right now. Where do we go from here? Mauricio, it's been more than a week since the U.S. failed to make it out of the group stage at the Copa America, and the questions just have not stopped.
Yeah, and you can't blame the fans, you can't blame the media, because it's big enough now, right? We keep talking about U.S. needs to arrive, soccer needs to arrive in U.S., and he has arrived, and it's going to arrive here at a large mass in 2 years. So where do we go from here? Do we just recycle it? Do we change it? Do we scratch? Do we start over? I think the questions are worthy of a good evaluation.
Yeah, well, we knew the matchup with Uruguay would not be an easy one. There were some key moments that went against the U.S., but really it was the loss to Panama that made the difference. In any case, with 2 years until the World Cup on American soil, some kind of a decision has to be made. So, Mauricio, what should U.S. soccer do, and is that any different than what they will do with Greg Berhalter?
Yeah, I think the two of them can be exclusive to each other. I think what they should do and what they will do, whether they get it right or not, that's subjective. We'll only know that after, aftermath. But I think they will have to make a change, and whether it's a change with Berhalter as far as changing, having influence on what and how he does it. Right now, what and how he does just simply isn't good enough. But maybe it is a change completely. It's an overhaul. You still have 2 years. You don't have a major tournament to prepare for anymore. This was it. Copa America was the major tournament. You spent 30 days together. You're not going to have the time anymore. But there's still time, and you can still have enough opportunities to get together as a team to work on this group that's relatively young.
Yeah, again, a lot more pressure with the World Cup coming to the United States in 2026. All right, let's talk about some of the potential candidates if they decide to go in another direction at the U.S. Soccer headquarters. There are a number of big names that they could certainly decide to go in. One would be a guy who has U.S. playing experience in Steve Cherundolo. You've got Jurgen Klopp. You've got Jim Curtin with Philadelphia Union, who's been a long-time, very successful coach at MLS. And then Patrick Vieira as well. Might even throw in another name into the conversation.
Yeah, and I would, only for one reason. All these names here, obviously, they're great names. Patrick Vieira and Jurgen Klopp, international coaches. That would make a huge kind of stand. But I would suggest that none of these guys have international experience. They've all been good at the club level and several different levels of it. But who has coached a U.S. national team? So the fifth one, the wrench that I want to throw in there, is Thierry Henry. He has played here in the U.S., resides in the U.S., has coached Belgium in the World Cup. He's currently coaching the under-21 French national team. He might be a candidate that we're maybe not thinking over, or they are thinking about it. We just don't know because we haven't heard. But I think to me, the qualification has to be, have you worked in the international level leading to a World Cup or Copa America? Because those cycles are tight and they're difficult to get a team together.
Yeah, it's much different than just being being a club coach where you can set down that sort of expectation and build that culture over time. Right. Different deal here for sure. All right, let's turn our attention to the Premier League matchup between Wolves and West Ham coming up on July the 27th at Everbank Stadium. An interesting twist this week, Mauricio, as West Ham announced the signing of Wolves captain Max Kilman for £40 million. This will add a little intrigue to the matchup for sure.
It's one of those, right? Hey, we're trading you to next door to the locker room. Yeah, that's a big signing, especially when the rivals. Every time you see big names go across within the same league, it always adds a little bit. Why are they willing to give away when the competition is the same? But I think it's going to create a little bit of rivalry in between. There's going to be a little bit of a flair into the game, especially these are preseason games, so sometimes you think that the energy might be a little bit slower. But when you exchange captain for and you bring in a lead into your locker room, I mean, West Ham is in need. They want to kind of get back to where they were. Wolves is a team that kind of sit in that middle table, depending if they have a good year or not. So this is it's a big name internally for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And also before the Stateside Cup matchup, Sporting Jacks is organizing a youth clinic in the flex field next to the stadium. Mauricio, this is going to be a great chance to learn from Wolves and West Ham players and coaches, as well as some local college and club coaches as well.
Well, what a great facility. You see that this is where the clinic's going to be taking place, and you can't say you can't enjoy enough being indoors in July playing soccer. That doesn't really happen here in Florida. So to get an opportunity to watch this high-level game, but to come within friends of the community and get to play and get to learn from coaches and and players, that coach at the EPL level, and some other former college coaches here as well. I think it's going to be a great experience.
Well, let's give you the details for the clinic for boys and girls age 4 to 18. The cost of the clinic is $65 and includes a ticket to the match. For friends and family joining, tickets to the game are available for $55. Go to sportingjacks.com for more information. Now back to the field. The U.S. Open Cup resumed this week. Tonight, New Mexico United of the USL Championship faces LAFC in Los Angeles. And Mal, you've been very impressed with the way that New Mexico's been playing lately. What are their chances against an MLS side?
I think very good, because I think the biggest thing with USL teams versus MLS is that they don't have enough firepower to really put games away. New Mexico's different. They're built different. In the offseason, we're talking about the rebuild of New Mexico, that they might score 5 and might get scored on 4, and that's kind of been the case with them. I mean, they score a lot of goals, but they've organized themselves. They're not as poorly defensively anymore. So going into an MLS team with a lot of confidence that they have now, leading the West and having a lot of firepower, I think they're going to be a handful for LAFC.
All right, we'll keep a close eye on what happens there coming up tonight. You can see the bracket. The semifinals are scheduled for August 27th. The U.S. Open Cup finals are September the 25th. All right, time now for our Island Wing Company Game of the Week. After 8 straight wins, Indy 11 finally lost a game. This week they tried to get back in the win column on the road at Rhode Island FC. To Rhode Island we go. Rhode Island came in with more draws than any team in the USL Championship, while Indy tried to maintain 3rd place in the East. 20th minute, Indy with a free kick from a dangerous area. They go short with it, and Lawrence Wooten threads it through the Rhode Island defense to give Indy 11 the early lead.
And Cole, what a great training ground play from Indy, and a heads up from that Rhode Island did not recognize it to prevent a top of the box guy by himself and get a little deflection there at the end.
Just 8 minutes later, Indy's at it again, this time in the run of play. Watch the touch from Romario Williams, who lifts it to Elliot Collier. Beautiful setup to make it 2-0 Indy.
Yeah, you typically know Romario, new signing for Indy 11 as a finisher, but he has got the ability to make that lovely little assist as an end product.
Indy took a 2-0 lead to halftime before Rhode Island got on the board on a corner kick. Mark Ibarra crosses it, and Frank Nodarcy heads it in.
Yeah, a lot of traffic for the Indy 11 goalkeeper, but that's why Rhode Island's such a tough out. They keep fighting, they keep getting back in the game, and typically with set pieces.
All right, 69th minute now, and this is not a replay. Ibarra with the cross after the corner kick. Nodarcy heads it in, and we're level at 2.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because I had to check my eyes when I saw this too. It doesn't have to be pretty, but just have to be effective. Repeat what works.
10 minutes later, Indy with a nice build-up here. Douglas Martinez gets free, picks out Tyler Gibson at the penalty spot, and Indy looks ready to take 3 points on the road.
I mean, that touch from Roberto Martinez just to kind of push the ball forward into lovely delivery to Gibson. Indy's on a tear. When they get forward, they go fast.
All right, then at this point, Indy's got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. We got into stoppage time, and it was time for stoppage time heroics. Albert Dequa, after a build-up here, Dequa, a guy who is known to score goals, this time he sets it up. Isaac Anking, 5 minutes into stoppage time, and Rhode Island steals a point back, their 10th draw of the season.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible how Rhode Island just keeps coming back into the game. And this is an easy finish per se. The ball's kind of laid into it. But look at the work from the Rhode Island forwards here. And Dequa, we know him well enough. Golden Boot last year. A lot of work to keep the ball out of bounds. And a lovely little finish into in the 6-yard box.
All right, let's take a look at some of the scores from around the USL Championship this week. I want to point out Las Vegas Lights going on the road to Sacramento Republic, getting a 1-0 victory. The Lights have been unbeaten in 7. Ditto for Loudoun United. A couple of teams that are finding their footing here in the midseason.
They really are, and that's not a good win for a good loss for Sacramento. Vegas is on the up, but Sacramento, they're fighting for the #1 spot, and that's a loss that's going to haunt them a little bit. And you got North Carolina FC 4-1 against Miami. Miami just cannot get a win this season.
All right, let's take a look at the standings, starting with the Western Conference. And you see New Mexico United, as we mentioned, on top right now. With the loss, Sacramento slides down to 3rd, but there is a lot of competition there. You go from 8th, which would be the last spot in the playoffs if the season ended today, with Las Vegas on 24 points, to the 2nd place team, Oakland Roots, just 5 points separating those 7 squads.
Yeah, and there really has been movement. Outside of New Mexico, once they claimed the #1 spot, there's been movement up and down everywhere. And you look at kind of Phoenix Rising and San Antonio FC, 2 teams that we would expect it to be fighting for. Phoenix Rising just let go of their coach, won the league, they're defending champions, and they're really struggling to even make playoffs.
All right, taking a look at the Eastern Conference, Louisville City stays on top. But look out, Indy 11, even with the draw, they continue to play very well, and they have a game in hand on Charleston and 2 in hand on Louisville.
Yeah, and Charleston was on a bad way a couple weeks ago. Now they're 3 on the spin, 2 wins in a row, 3 unbeaten. Yeah, Indy's not going to love the fact that they got a tie against Rhode Island, even though it's still a point on the road. But the Rowdies, just they can't seem to make up ground. We keep saying it. Detroit City FC still has games in hand, so they're still alive for a top 2-3 spot.
All right, Mauricio, we are now through the first half of the USL Championship season. What are you expecting to see in the second half of the year?
Yeah, some teams are going to continue to stay consistent, but this is a long season, so the injuries will kind of come into play, international breaks will kind of come into play, and it'll be interesting to see if any team makes a signing that really changes kind of where they are. You saw Indy 11, their progression, kind of their rise, has been because they actually were aggressive and made some signings. On the opposite side, which teams are kind of saying, you know what, this is it for us, and they're okay with letting go of a couple players, strengthen the top, and they're starting to focus on next year.
Yeah, building for the future. If it's not going to work this time around, I think we'll probably see that quite a bit more as we get to the end of July.
We look at
August.
El Paso, right? Just really struggle. Miami, and they have some pretty big names on their roster right now.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. We'll see how it all plays out as the summer continues. Still to come, we check in with Becky Burleigh, get her thoughts on the state of U.S. soccer. And remember, you can become a member of Sporting Jacks. It's absolutely free. Just go to sportingjacks.com to sign up. You'll get discounts on club merchandise, invitations to VIP events, entries into contests for prizes and experiences, and receive the Sporting Jacks monthly newsletter. You can put your deposits down for season tickets as well for the Sporting Jacks men's and women's team and receive exclusive Sporting Jacks founding member pins. Just go to sportingjacks.com to become a member. More to come on the Sporting Jacks Report. USL national broadcast schedule continues. Next week on Wednesday night, that's July 17th, Birmingham Legion faces Rhode Island FC at 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Then July 19th, it's Phoenix Rising against El Paso Locomotive. It's a late night, 11 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Then a week from Saturday, July the 20th, it's the Pittsburgh Riverhounds taking on Hartford Athletic. That's at 8 o'clock kick on ESPN2. And when the USL Super League debuts next month, all of the matches will stream on Peacock. And we invite you to join us on Sunday to watch the finals of the European Championships. We'll be at Island Wing Company on Southside. The game kicks off at 3 with food and drink specials and prizes to be given away. It's free to attend, but please RSVP at sportingjacks.com. All right, we welcome in Becky Burleigh now, who joins us each and every week. All right, here's the $100 million question, Becky. What's your take on the U.S. men's national team situation and what comes next?
Well, I'm not sure that my take is going to be super popular, but what I'm thinking is that if we really want to develop American coaches that can coach at the international level with a lot of ability, we have to give them reps. And so when we make changes, we just lose the opportunity for that to happen. Now, what complicates the situation is a domestic World Cup and the fact that we have the golden generation and the fact that the fan base is quite divided. And so how do you make all of that come together? That's the $1 million question.
So we have a new sporting director, Matt Crocker, that kind of took over after the World Cup, and a little bit of an issue that the Reynas and and Greg Berhalter were having, but he kind of inherited that. This is his second opportunity to recreate the position and set some parameters and expertise for what that position should look like. What do you think necessarily that position should have as far as experience to bring to that level?
That's a really good question. What I would hope is that between the sporting director and the head coach, there would be this great synergy of like a thinking partner relationship. And that's tough because, ultimately you get hired and fired by the sporting director. However, I think that's the only way we can make this work in our country if we're trying to develop American coaches. If we're not, and we go international, then it's probably going to be the head coach is going to be working a little bit independent of the sporting director because they're going to come in with their own ideas. But I just feel like it's a tough spot to be in because I realize the economic situation we're in with the World Cup coming, but I also realize that, Greg Berhalter does seem to have support from the players. And is that support because he makes them too comfortable, which has been argued, or is that support because he's genuinely created a culture that people want to be a part of?
So I guess the question is the fix as simple as a new coach, or are there other issues with U.S. soccer that go beyond that? And you mentioned the pressure of having a World Cup coming here in less than 2 years. That certainly adds to it.
There's no question, because it's not just the pressure of the performance, but it's the economic impact of that World Cup, and how soccer is perceived in the U.S. going forward. And so there's a lot riding on what's happening here in 2 years. But at the same time, I think it's like we keep making changes, and those changes sort of in some ways set us back because you've got to start over. And that's my biggest fear with making changes now is, yeah, it's 2 years away, but 2 years with what, several camps and some friendlies, and not a whole lot of opportunity to really get tested under fire.
Good stuff, Becky. We'll be keeping an eye on this for sure. One of the big stories in the world of soccer, including here in the United States. It's not too early to become a season ticket member of Sporting Jacks. Just go to sportingjacks.com, put down your deposit. $25 reserves your space for the men's or women's teams. And if you want to reserve a spot on both, just $40. Go to sportingjacks.com to save your seat for pro soccer in Jacksonville. Coming up, our youth soccer spotlight will put some of the biggest questions parents have for their kids to Mauricio to get his thoughts on how to navigate the youth soccer scene. That's straight ahead as the Sporting Jacks report rolls on. Sporting Jacks will be unveiling the official kit in the months to come, but you can already get your own Sporting Jacks official merchandise, from t-shirts and hats to sweatshirts and, of course, the scarf. You can find Sporting Jacks official merchandise at sportingjacks.com, at our official team store on Phillips Highway, and at We Got Soccer. It is time now for our youth soccer spotlight, presented by the Bearded Pig Barbecue. Little different approach this week. Instead of hearing from a youth team or coach or youth players, wanted to use Mauricio's expertise on this a little bit, because there is so much out there right now with regards to developing kids in youth soccer. Parents have a lot of questions. So let's start with sort of the basics. Is what do parents need to be thinking about as their child starts to show that they really are getting into soccer?
Yeah, it can be really confusing for a parent that wants to put their kids into sport in general, specifically a sport that they may not know a whole lot about, which might be soccer in a way. And they're getting a lot of information, whether it's from their clubs or from friends, and then online. There's tons of information. One thing that's always important to look at a player is it holistically. Why a player is not just a technical player, physical player. So when you look at this graphic here, oftentimes we kind of just focus on the top, which is the technical, or physically. If they're physically more gifted, they kind of tend to move up or down a little bit, right? But it's important to look at all of it. But all of this, the technical, tactical, physical, the social, and the mental, it's all about being age appropriate. Where do you put this kind of focus into? So that we have a graphic here that kind of helps you kind of walk you through a little bit of that. And really the social core in that 4 to 6 year old is really where you want to make sure your kids are safe. They're in a place where they can feel like they're having fun, they're enjoying what they're doing.
So you're talking about this, and let's talk about what these colors mean. The dark blue is sort of the primary focus at that age. The light blue, don't even think about it, don't worry about it at this point, right? When you're talking about kids, 4 to 6 or 7 to 9, there are a lot of things that you don't really have to be that concerned with. What about as those kids start to develop and get down the way? Walk us through what this really indicates.
That you're exactly right. So one thing that you see right away, that technical is always there, because a player always has to know how to handle the ball. But sometimes there's a little bit too much priority on the technical in the early stages of their development, and you have to put it in the right place. So once they fall in love with the game, and they're that 6, 7, 8 years old, really start kind of coming into focus on the technical, because now it's about muscle memory. And as you kind of come down into the 10 and above, and 13 and the kind of that fourth to the bottom, the last to the bottom, it's really where the mental kind of comes in. So a lot of pressure that we're putting on kids really early at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Clubs are, coaches are, environments are, to win at all costs. It's really too early for their development. Right? They should continue to focus on their technical, the social, but that competitive nature, the win matters. It's important. It's part of the development, but it has to come a little bit later age, where they've kind of focused and already developed and grew in a lot of the other areas.
And you mentioned the physical, which was the last one on that list, that really becomes a big focus when you start talking about 15, 16, 17-year-olds.
Well, really, because our bodies really haven't developed to the extent naturally where they're kind of going to be. And you can focus on the physical as not your main priority, but you can have exercising drills when you kind of put in on the technical part of it, where the focus is not on the physical, but maybe you go through a ladder drill or a cone drill with the ball dribbling, and at the end have to spring back. right? You're working on the physical on that point, but you haven't spent 30 to 40 minutes in practice only working on the physical. The amount of coaches and environments that I go out and I see where early ages, they're only focusing on the physical.
Yeah, good advice there for parents of kids who are getting into soccer or really starting to fall in love with the game. I want to remind you to join us for the Sporting Jack Soccer Hour every Monday at 6 o'clock on 1010 a.m. We talk soccer. Mauricio, Becky, and I. Everything in the world of soccer is fair game. So join us on 1010 a.m. and on 1010xl.com. Stay with us. More of the Sporting Jacks Report is straight ahead. Remember, you can watch the Sporting Jacks Report every Wednesday at noon on ABC 25 with re-airings on Saturdays on ABC 25 and on demand on First Coast News Plus. All right, let's talk for a moment about the European Championships. Tonight it's the semifinals. We've seen some amazing performances. We've also seen an unbelievable number of own goals this year. There's like 10 own goals already in this tournament, but the settings have been wonderful.
They really have. I mean, it's looked at what do you want it to look like, a party, stadiums full.
Mm-hmm.
Games have been great. I love the fact that players, the level of the games have been really, really good as well. Tactical, technical, physical. They don't look like they're at the end of their season, which is what the summer is, but I'm sure a lot of players are going to want a break after this. But it's been a spectacle and really enjoyable to watch.
It really has been some great soccer for sure. Hey, remember to follow us on social media at Sporting_Jacks most places, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Sporting Jacks Report.